Hey everyone, thanks for tuning in and welcome back to another episode of the Carnivore Kitchen podcast. Steven here with Team Euphoric, and today we're going to be having some steak and talking about how to progress your workouts. And if you want to learn how to make steak cordon bleu, then check out the recipe link in the description. The name of today's episode is Regression equals Progression. A common mistake that a lot of people make when beginning an exercise routine is performing exercises that they are not able to perform properly. Sometimes, this can be corrected very quickly with some verbal cues. However, more often than not, the person just lacks the proper biomechanics to perform the exercise properly. In the latter, regressing the movement pattern to a variation that is simple enough that the person can perform properly, but not so simple that it is effortless for them, is the best strategy to gradually progress them to the point where they are able to perform the primal standard properly. When it comes to progressing exercises, the more stable the person is, the easier an exercise will be to perform, and the less stable the person is, the more difficult an exercise will be to perform. It all comes back to what we discussed last week about the neurological demand of the exercise. When thinking of neurological demand in exercise progressions, it helps to understand how we are able to go from helpless infants that need to be taken everywhere to independent humans that can roam freely around the earth, which brings us to the 9 stages of infant development. Those stages are supine, prone, quadruped or 4-point, seated, side-seated, tall kneeling, half kneeling, standing, and gait, which is a single leg stance. When you are first born, all you can really do is lay on your back or stomach while you flail around. Eventually, as you develop a little bit of core strength and stability, you'll be able to roll over between supine and prone positions. Next, your curiosity will get the best of you as you will want to explore the world, so you will want to raise your upper body to make yourself taller by pressing your hands into the ground and drag yourself around the floor in order to go from point A to point B. This is to prepare your body to be able to crawl. Once you are able to crawl, this will help to develop your spinal, shoulder, and hip stability as well as your core strength, and once your core strength is adequate, you'll be able to sit unassisted. Next, your goal will be to walk. Prior to walking, you'll sit on your side in an attempt to kneel on both knees to make yourself taller, and once you are able to kneel on both knees, you'll move one leg forward into a lunge position or half kneeling position in an attempt to stand up. Once you are finally able to stand up, you will be a lot less stable as you will be a lot taller, meaning your center of gravity will be a lot higher, and you will only have 2 points of contact with the ground. You'll wobble back and forth before continually dropping into a deep squat position, and continue to do that until you have developed enough core strength and joint stability to be able to walk, which is the gait pattern, and is also the most neurologically advanced of all the stages of infant development, as when you are walking, up to 40% of the time spent is on one leg, which is the least stable of all 9 stages of infant development. Now that we know the 9 stages of infant development, let's see how we can use these principles and apply them to progress some of the primal movement patterns. For the squat pattern, the first is going to be the supine squat variations. You can perform exercises such as knee pull-ins and supine Swiss ball squats with your back on the ball. For the prone squat variations, you can do quadruped to child's pose, or you could do something like a stability ball prone jackknife. Then, in a seated squat variation, you could perform exercises such as high box squats, and low box squats. For tall kneeling squat variations, you can perform exercises such as kneeling bodyweight squats or kneeling barbell squats. Then for half kneeling squat variations, the front foot elevated split squat, the split squat, or the rear foot elevated or Bulgarian split squat would be some excellent progressions. Then we have our standing squat variations, things like your dumbbell squats, your barbell back squats, and your overhead squats. And then finally, we have our single leg stance variations, where you can perform exercises such as pistol squats or pistol squats holding onto your foot. There are many variations which you can perform, and you can apply them to all of the primal movement patterns, such as the bend pattern, the lunge pattern, the push pattern, the pull pattern, and the twist pattern. But for now, we're just going to leave it at the squat pattern just to give you some examples of how exactly you can progress the exercises. To make this concept even more simple, we can also chunk these stages down further into 5 broad categories of supine and prone, seated, kneeling, and standing, and then further subdivide each of those 5 broad categories into stable and unstable. The way this would look is for supine and prone in stable position, you would perform exercises in a supine or prone position on the floor or bench. For supine prone unstable, you would perform the exercises in supine or prone on something like a BOSU or stability ball, something that is unstable. Then for seated stable, you would perform exercises in a seated position with some back support. For seated unstable, you would want to perform exercises in a seated position without any back support or on something like a stability ball. Then for kneeling stable, you could perform exercises in a kneeling position on the floor, and for kneeling unstable, you can perform exercises in a kneeling position on something like a BOSU or stability ball. For standing stable, you would perform standing exercises on the floor, and to make them more unstable, you would perform those exercises on something like a BOSU, stability ball, or something like a Jasmine cushion. Then finally, we have the single leg stable and unstable positions. For the single leg stable, you would perform the single leg stance exercises on solid surface like a ground, and to make it more unstable, you could perform them on something like a yoga mat or anything that is going to make the ground less stable. Now, let's see how we can apply this to the push pattern to progress the pattern using dumbbells. For a supine prone stable position, you could do a dumbbell bench press. For a supine prone unstable position, you can perform a dumbbell chest press with your back on a stability ball. For seated stable, you can perform a seated dumbbell shoulder press with back support, and for seated unstable, you can perform a seated dumbbell shoulder press sitting on a stability ball. For kneeling stable, you can perform an exercise such as a kneeling dumbbell shoulder press, and for kneeling unstable, you can perform a half kneeling dumbbell shoulder press with your knee hovering off the ground. For standing stable, something like a standing dumbbell shoulder press would be an excellent exercise, and for standing unstable, a standing dumbbell shoulder press standing on a stability ball. Then, for the single leg stable and unstable, for single leg stable, you could perform something like a single leg dumbbell shoulder press, and for single leg unstable, something like a single leg dumbbell shoulder press while standing on a BOSU ball with the dome side down. And there you have it. That is how you can learn to progress and regress exercises depending on where you're starting. Now that you have a basic understanding of the 9 stages of infant development and the 5 broad categories of exercise progressions, try experimenting with them and figuring out how to progress all of the movement patterns for bodyweight exercises and with various pieces of equipment such as dumbbells, barbells, kettlebells, and cable machines, and start at the most difficult exercise regression that you can manage and progress from there, because regression equals progression.
Thanks for hanging around until the end of the video. If you enjoyed the video, be sure to like the video and comment down in the comment section, as it would really help out with the algorithm, and also share this video so we can help get this information out to as many people as possible. And also subscribe to the channel by clicking on the icon in the bottom right hand corner and hit the notification bell so you don't miss out on any of the videos. For those of you interested in health optimization, you can check out the video in the top right corner where I discuss the 6 foundation principles. And for those of you interested in optimizing your performance, then consider becoming a member. It's only $5 per month and you get a ton of perks, including exclusive access to this program design lecture series playlist above my head.